Well, Henshaw here again, Constitutional Crisis Channel, and this, as promised, this video is a segue from the one that we just talked about with the police officers and the murders of, in all these cases, innocent black victims who did nothing wrong and got killed anyway during the course of traffic stops, for crying out loud. So the problem I see as it is what happens when juries either acquit, as they did in Minnesota, or come back deadlocked in Cincinnati, and there may be another trial there, who knows. But the reason for it is that these juries are not being properly instructed. If they were, just as I've argued in the in traffic court, that they can't convict us by being able to prove the element of willfulness in commission of these crimes, and they can't. I have in one of my packets, I have a letter to the DA demanding that they define willful. And that document alone is probably going to encourage them to dismiss their charges and not even, get serious with someone who can put up a real fight. That's the whole point of doing this. But in the context we're talking about here later with these criminal cases, and by the way, the one in Minnesota was charged with second-degree manslaughter. Manslaughter. That, to me, if I'm on a common law jury and or a grand jury, and that's where we're headed and try to get our own if we have to, that's at least second-degree murder. I mean, second-degree manslaughter, even if he gets convicted, what is that, 1 to 3, and out in 18 months for good behavior, like Johannes Meserly and the Oscar Grant murder here in Oakland at the BART station? It's all the bastard got. Well, that's not how it should be. The grand jury should have full authority to take care of business and come back and find that that's what went on, and you charge him with second-degree murder, and you convict him, and you put him away for 15 years to 25 or whatever, and we start doing that, that's going to get the attention of a lot of police associations across the country, that they better damn well start doing their jobs and insisting on being properly trained in how to do them. Second-degree manslaughter. In Cincinnati, they came back deadlocked because the jury couldn't agree that anything had happened there. I haven't heard the whole debates about that, but they came back, I think it was actually 6-6. But none of this happens if the jury is instructed, as they should be, that the cop had no authority to make the traffic stop. Didn't have a warrant either, for that matter, but no authority, since the court wouldn't have had jurisdiction over the alleged offense. That being the case, that would be grounds to get the case dismissed at the first instance in the traffic court, thrown out, with prejudice, no case. With no case, the cop is acting beyond the scope of his legal authority. And even with a badge and a gun and what have you in a uniform, he's not acting as a cop, or more importantly, a peace officer, not a law enforcement officer. In that case, I would instruct the jury that the element of willfulness can virtually be presumed here, because if he's going to make a stop where he knew or should have known there was no authority to prosecute the victim, that's the essence of willfulness, and therefore should be prosecuted that way. If the cop in turn wants to invoke what's called the Nuremberg defense and claim that his superior should have trained him, he can raise that as an affirmative defense in front of a jury. And we can also try to indict people that are in that position that don't train cops properly, because maybe they are the ones really responsible for murders like this. It has to stop somewhere. But if they get that kind of a jury instruction, and you can be damn sure that the justice system isn't going to allow that ordinarily until we go in there and demand it and say, wait a minute, these were flat-out murders here. There's no other way to say that. I mean, if these cops would have been killed by these black defendants, do you think they'd be getting second-degree manslaughter? More like 2,000 volts. This has to change. I mean, it just got to stop sooner or later here. And this is one way we can do it. Is to say, wait a minute, we're going to presume willful here because you knew or should have known. And after all, if you're a cop, you took an oath to preserve, protect, and defend this Constitution, which means you damn well know what your duties are, or you should know, and it's not our fault that you don't. That's on you. So you learn them even if you have to do it independently. But better yet, get whoever it is, the sheriff, the attorney general, whoever the hell it is, to instruct you properly, where you know, for example, in these traffic cases, that a quote-unquote person is only an artificial corporate entity. Once that becomes clear, none of this happens. It just doesn't, because now the DA can't make the case. There's no case, no jurisdiction, and the cop is acting called ultra vires. In other words, beyond the scope of his authority. That's normally associated with corporations acting outside their corporate charter. But since we're talking about incorporated governments here, I think the same thought process would apply. And it's not our fault that they didn't know. But we're going to teach you not to know. If we have to sit your ass in jail for 15 to 25 years, you'll figure it out. And by the way, we also had a recent San Francisco case, I'll get the details on it, where they settled with a family whose loved one was shot and killed by a cop, another traffic stop, for like $3.5 million. There was no case even filed. It was that bad that they didn't even have to file a case. As far as I'm aware, there's been no criminal case filed there, and the cop has got a sweetheart deal to quote-unquote retire from the police force and try to find other work somewhere else, and apparently is never going to spend a day in jail for this. Now, this has to stop. I mean, this is the cop here. If anything, what they should have said was, you're fired, your benefits are gone, whatever you had is gone, you don't have it. Not our problem. The acts you did were clearly beyond the scope of your authority, and this has to start happening. Now, yeah, there's an obvious conflict of interest here, quote-unquote, with these police officers association and all that, but, you know, I have that covered in my documentary paperwork that's available. You'll see details of it later, but I have a special document that's a challenge to DAs and to cops, especially cops. They get on the witness stand, and they're the only one testifying against you in a traffic case, right? And yet, they belong to the police association and or the corrections officers associations. There's one of the two most powerful lobbyists there is in the state capital, Sacramento, here. What do they want? More cops, more laws, more jails, more convictions. With that agenda, and I'm sure that's drummed into them weekly, if not daily, how can they possibly give any neutral, unbiased testimony against you at a quote-unquote trial? And on top of that, the Supreme Court has said, if you don't know what you're reading and how to counteract it, that a cop on the witness stand has blanket immunity for any and all perjury committed on the witness stand. They really said that. The case is called Briscoe versus LaHue, L-A-H-U-E, 460 U.S. 325. But that's only in the civil rights context. If we come at him with the common law trespass via armis and with no jurisdiction in the trial court, now we're looking at some real relief. That's where I'm headed. That's where I want to help you to arrive to do the same thing. And it isn't that hard. And by the way, on that point, I close with the observation here of a wise man from China that once said, understanding is hard. Once one understands, action is easy. It's my job to make it as easy for you to understand as possible and as difficult as possible for the dumbass to avoid. Now we're going to catch them in their own trap, stop them with absence of jurisdiction, and that's the road to recovery. That's how we get our government back, our states back, our citizenship back, our rights back. That's an endeavor that's well worth your effort. I've devoted my entire life to it. That's how important it is. And it should be to you, too, especially those of you that have children that are going to be, living in this, nation in the next 20, 30, 40 years. If you want them to have a better life, then you get involved now. You learn these things. It's really not that hard. There's about 4 or 5 issues. You get down pat, you'll be so far ahead of the DAs and the public defenders, you can't stand it. And you teach your kids to do the same thing. And now they're on the way to a much better life. That's what I hope to do, and that's what I think I can do for you. And you want to check out my documents that are available. Check the information will be below this in the notes on this video of how to contact me, and check into my video packets. And I'd love to hear from you. And if you do get things like these, I cheerfully encourage comments, questions, and suggestions in order to make things better and more understandable. Do not be afraid to do that. If you don't understand anything, send emails. I'll be happy to go over it with you. But the instructions, I try to make it pretty clear what you do, how you do it, with whom you do it, and when you do it. Now, if you set the record early enough in these traffic cases, you're going to get dismissed just like I do. As I was at a traffic court, and the last time, 15 seconds. Hardly even had a chance to sit down. When that happens to you, just think how good that's going to make you feel. You get out and walk out and leave all those poor saps in there to face the consequences that are paying all these damn fines and all that. To see how good that makes you feel walking out of there, especially when the commissioner gives you the evil eye when you're doing it. the traffic commissar. So that's the whole point of these two videos, and I hope that I have made my point here. Thank you.